Hello, everybody. This is Tito Bort, CEO at Alti Sales, and I'm so excited. It's 2021. We're getting back to these SDR Superstar series, learning a bunch of techniques, methods, and ideas that frontline SDRs are running to exceed quota. Today, I have with me Molly Velbeck from BigCommerce. She's based in Austin, Texas, and she's been knocking it out of the park. So today, she's going to share with us some of her tips, tricks, and strategies. Welcome, Molly. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Awesome. I'm so excited because we were chatting obviously before recording this interview about some of your strategies, and you keep things so simple. You make things look so easy, and you're knocking it out of the park with like good, simple processes and ideas. And like you and I were talking, sometimes some SDRs overcomplicate it. So, before we dive too deep into the content and start showing some of the, templates, techniques, methods, workflows that people should use and tools and so on and so forth, why don't you tell us a little bit about, BigCommerce, what do you guys do on your role there specifically?
Yeah. So BigCommerce is an open SaaS e-commerce platform. So we just focus on the e-commerce part of websites, and average deal size for us is about, it depends, but it's around 3 to 5,000, could be even a little bit more, with monthly reoccurring revenue, with contracts about a year to 2 years out.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And then therefore you must be reaching out to companies that already have some sort of e-commerce or wanting to start e-commerce depending on the segment. You mentioned you are on the enterprise team.
That's correct. So enterprise, we deem enterprise businesses selling over $20 million in online revenue or $250 million in offline revenue. So these are well-established enterprise companies that I'm outbound reaching out to.
Awesome. I always like giving the audience a little bit of context. So you're obviously in the enterprise segment. Your average deal size, again, call it $5,000 a month. That's 60 grand a year plus. Because the strategies that we share are more specific to one segment, like somebody trying to get a $20 million deal size versus somebody trying to get a $5,000 deal size. Both extremes are going to be very different. Let's talk about how your company kind of thinks about your work and kind of like the goals they set. Are you measured on the meetings held or things moving to pipeline or revenue close? How are they looking at this?
So it's meetings set, but we are paid out on, and our quota is tied to pipeline created. So once I pass over a meeting to an account executive, they will determine at the end of the discovery call if they're going to move that meeting or move that prospect into their pipeline, and that's what we are paid out on and held to.
Awesome. I know the enterprise segment usually just gets a few meetings a month. What is usually kind of like the quota for the enterprise team here?
So our quota is 4, but I've scheduled between 6 to 7 meetings typically a month, with overachieving my quota between 150% to 200% each month.
Yeah, that's awesome. And in a second, we're going to get into some of the strategies because Molly is working directly with one of her counterparts on the account executive team. They're able to convert a much higher number of meetings into pipeline, which is making her the best performer. So 150 to 200% of quota is awesome. Before we get into the conversion, let's first talk a little bit about like your secret sauce. So you're at 150 to 200% of quota. Most SDR teams on average achieve 60, 70%, which means that you must be getting twice as many meetings as your peers. Where are these meetings coming from? What's the strategy? How'd you learn to do what you're doing?
So these meetings, it's all outbound. So we have leads that come in from our data and ADR team, and we're reaching out to those folks. Mine is just the strategy that my manager, Stephanie, has created of coming up with these auto drip sequences that we're using. So we're putting these leads into sequences, auto drip sequences. They're persona based or platform specific, and putting them into these sequences. And once they start bubbling up or clicking the emails, engaging in the emails, that's when I'm taking a more personalized approach of reaching out to those folks with a personalized email or a phone call, and trying to convert that into a meeting from there.
Cool. So just to clarify for the audience, when you say platform specific or persona specific, you mean there might be a technical buyer, so there might be a more technical sequence. There might be a person that's more like digital minded, and you're talking about more digital stuff. That might be persona specific. And then platform specific, do you mean like, oh, I know which companies are using a competitor of mine, which is maybe Shopify. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So we use tools that help us determine what platform they are on.
Okay, cool. We're gonna get to the tools in a second. Tell me about this sequence. You said it's an auto drip sequence. Like how many manual steps, how many phone calls, how many direct mail, how much like snail mail, how much video? This sequence, how much effort do you put into it?
So this auto drip sequence, it's already created out for us in Outreach. So it's a series of, I believe it's 7 steps, 6 of which are auto emails that get sent out to the prospect over the course of, I believe it's 14 days. And then the final step, step 7, would be a phone call. But like I mentioned, if they are engaging in the content or the emails that are being sent, it'll notify me in Outreach to call them. So throughout that time during the auto drip, I will most likely make more than just that one phone call, unless for some reason they aren't engaging in the content.
That's awesome. So you're telling me that there's SDRs that are making $100 a day, working like crazy, spraying and praying, dialing everybody and anybody. And you're sitting back, putting people on an auto drip sequence. You drink your coffee, figure out who's opening your emails, and you just call them and book meetings. That's kind of genius, actually. And so the structure of the sequence is everything is automatically populated. What do your emails say? Like, are you like, hey, Molly, I want to get a meeting with you. Like, let's chat. Or like, you said some of this are like platform specific, some of them are persona specific. Give us more insight on these.
Yeah, so for the persona specific ones, like I mentioned, there's a technology persona sequence. So that'll be focused more on the technical buyer. So someone that's going to care a lot about the e-commerce platform and what it can do on a technical level. And then we have a marketing specific auto drip sequence that touches base on our omni-channel or selling on Instagram, Facebook, all of those things that maybe someone on the marketing side might care more about. And then we also have a Shopify auto drip sequence where it's tailored towards how we differentiate ourselves between BigCommerce and Shopify. And so I believe it'll be the technology persona email that'll be below, but some kind of an example of what I'm talking about in these emails. The first 1 to 2 emails are more discussing what BigCommerce is, or mentioning some third-party examples, and then saying to let me know if they're available to speak in more detail. And then from there, we're dripping in some more content, whether it's examples of the platform with examples of BigCommerce, and then examples of merchants that are on our platform today. So some customer examples in there as well.
That's awesome. So a few different sequences, they're all targeted to the right persona. And you just sit back and relax. As you said, we're going to be sharing some of these emails below. I'm going to put some of the examples of the sequence itself, which is more generic. And then when you're seeing engagement, you're actually emailing them again, right? Do you take them off sequence and just craft something different?
I do. So I as soon as I see any bit of engagement, I take them out of the sequence immediately. Since it is an auto drip sequence, it's going to email them automatically. So I don't want another generic kind of more auto email getting sent to them if I see that they're engaged. So I pull them out of the sequence, and then from there, I just create follow-up tasks and outreach to send them a more personalized email. Once I send that more personalized email, that's when I'm going to start calling them a little bit more than just the one phone call that's currently in that sequence.
That's really cool. That's an awesome way to like leverage the power of like tools like outreach. You're being smart. You're throwing a bunch of leads, trying to figure out who's open to at least exploring new ideas, and then just focusing on them and being more tailored. Yeah, so for everybody, we're gonna put some of the generic sequence emails, but below those, you're gonna find also some of the more personalized emails that Molly has put together. Let's start talking about like one of the other things you're doing really well is not only getting the engagement and keeping it simple and just sending the emails and engaging with these people, but you and your account executive who work together as a team, you're paired up, are converting more meetings into pipeline than the rest of the team. How are you doing that? What are you doing different than other SDRs?
So when I began my alignment with Patrick Gavinsky is my account executive, he told me that what he likes to see is his SDRs to just, as soon as they get any bit of engagement or desire for the prospect to take a meeting with BigCommerce, is to just qualify it out, make sure that the headquarters are in his territory and the revenue is correct for enterprise, and then just pass that on to him. Go ahead and schedule the meeting, and he will take it from there. So he does not want me to take a call prior to scheduling with the prospect, just because he doesn't want me to, tell the prospect some information that I might not know about our platform, and it'll also create, a disjointed kind of sales process of going from me, the SDR, to the AE, and then from the AE it goes on to a more solutions architect level of getting into a technical scoping.
Cool. How much insight do you get into, and we haven't talked about this before, but it just came to my mind, how much insight do you get into what Patrick is actually doing on those calls? Like, he's one of the top performers of the company as an AE. Are you learning some of his skills? Do you have access to something like Chorus or Gong or anything like that?
So we have Gong, but I typically try to sit in on those meetings just to, hear what's going on. I'm always excited to see how these deals progress. So always wanting to sit in when I can.
Yeah, that's good training. One of the things that I recommend SDRs do is exactly that. Like, if you're a top performing SDR and like what do you see yourself doing in the future, might be something like an account executive, or at least you want to learn and explore what that looks like. Hey, sit
Right.
in on those calls and see how the first call goes. And then later on, pick your favorites and wait a couple of weeks and look at the second call and maybe the third call and see if any of the deals that you end up closing, try to go back and map the journey exactly what happened on call 1, 2, 3, 4. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the company as a whole. So you are paired up one-on-one. Is that the case for everybody? Is everybody paired up like that?
Everyone's paired one-to-one. Occasionally, an SDR might have two AEs that they're covering for, but it's one-to-one right now.
Okay. And then the only case that one SDR would be covering for two AEs is, I guess, if an SDR for some reason leaves, gets another job or whatever, or gets
Yeah,
promoted or something.
that's correct.
Yeah, cool. And then in your case, it seems like you really like that structure. You have a good AE, you guys have a good relationship. Do you feel, because I'm a proponent of different structure, so I'm always curious to get people's thoughts, right? But do you feel like everybody at the company is really happy on the one-to-one structure, or are there people that are much happier than others and feel like some people feel like they got the short end of the stick because their AE just doesn't move things to pipeline sometimes?
I think so. I think it's, it can be challenging when there are some months where a territory is a little bit dry, and you might not be able to, you know, get these meetings into pipeline for your account executive. And then there are other territories that are really awesome, and are always have a healthy, steady flow of pipeline. So I think the one-to-one is good just because you can have that relationship with your account executive, but I do see why the alternative, structure would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I've written a blog about this called SDR, territory-based SDRs. Please don't. And the reason I advocate against it is, imagine you're like prospecting in Texas and that's your territory, and then we have the energy problems where like Texas can like shut down for like a few days. What would you do? Like, you're an SDR sitting in the office like doing nothing, right? Or sometimes also like the propensity of a state to move to like things like e-commerce might be dependent on its population. It's not perfectly linear according to the population or the GDP or however people are splitting these territories. It might be also like a mindset thing. Like, the mindset of people who live in Iowa is different than the mindset of people who live in California. Just not because anything other than like the states have different types of people. Like, culture is different. So it's interesting. If people want to check that out, they're welcome to. I do want to go a little bit deeper on the tools here, Molly, because you're obviously on the e-commerce side. I don't know if just a handful of people who are watching this will be looking at that. But like, what are some tools that you find are helpful in your specific scenario?
So we use a variety of tools, but the main one that we work with is e-tail insights, built with, and similar tech. So all of these three tools give a better understanding of the technology that's on the website. So, for example, Skull Candy, they're a merchant of BigCommerce, so they utilize our e-commerce platform to run their site. And if you were to go on their website and pull up these tools, it'll tell you that they are using BigCommerce, about their average online sales, where they're headquartered, and a variety of other things like payment gateways and different things that can be used to help me in the process of reaching out to a prospect, because there are different things to highlight for different competitors of ours like Shopify or Magento that I can look for on their website with these tools.
Yeah, cool. And then you mentioned in passing, though, you aren't actually doing any data research. You have a data research team.
We do.
That's really cool. That's another thing we advocate heavily for. Another blog post, if people are interested, is called AE, then SDR, then LRR. And LRR stands for Lead Research Rep. And we talk a little bit about the structure there. But do you even access like things like ZoomInfo or any of these data tools in order to find contacts here and there, like sometimes a referral or whatever?
We do have ZoomInfo. I typically don't use it that much. It would only be for maybe trying to find another phone number for a prospect, or maybe another email, or if I see someone on LinkedIn that might be a better fit to reach out to, then I'll go to ZoomInfo. But for the most part, our data team scrubs all of that, sends it over to our account development representatives, which then they build out those contact information of specific personas that we target.
That's awesome. And then cool. So we talked about data research tools, some of the e-commerce tools. You're keeping it simple, not a lot of video, not a lot of LinkedIn. So it's outreach, SalesLoft. What tool do you use for outbound?
We use outreach.
Okay. And you like that one?
I do. That's the only one I've ever used, so I don't know any different. But for the most part, it does its job and helps me stay organized.
Yeah, I'm a big fan too. I'm on outreach, and I've actually tried SalesLoft and Mixmax and Yesware back in the day, even ToutApp. I've been through them all. Outreach is by far my favorite. So that's really awesome. Molly, you are absolutely killing it. I think people are going to enjoy reading the emails that we have below, because those are awesome. This strategy that you're running, like who did you learn it from? How did you come up with it? It's crazy that people are doing so many complex things, and they're just like
Mhm.
doing something so simple yet so powerful.
So my current SDR manager, she's the enterprise SDR manager. Her name is Stephanie Lemoyne. Prior to becoming the SDR manager, she was an enterprise SDR. So it's awesome to have a manager that was in the seat, so she knows what it's like to do the cold calling and the outreach. But she developed this strategy because it worked for her when she was in the same seat that I'm in. So during that time, she was a mentor to me, and she still is a mentor as my manager today. But I had a better understanding of what her process looked like and her strategy. And so that's just something that she's continued throughout her time as a manager to really show us that it works. It's a great strategy to focus on the highly engaged accounts.
That's awesome. Yep, exactly right. And I would say that's maybe one of the best things that can happen to an SDR, just working for somebody or having a mentor who has been there, done that. I can guide you through the process and help you like get to high performance quickly. Because then you can start exceeding quota, and then that gets fun. Awesome, Molly. You have shared so much. I think the audience is going to find this super, super helpful. Any other things you want to share about like your experience as an SDR, or any advice for other people that might be watching this?
I would just say, do your best to just keep it simple. I think sometimes you can try many different strategies and get kind of weighed down with the day-to-day work. But I think at the end, if you can keep it simple and just continue to focus on the strategy that works for you, I think you're going to be put in a great spot moving forward.
Cool. That's awesome. I think for everybody, if you've watched some of these SDR Superstar series, you'll find other people saying, "Hey, you gotta follow XYZ person on LinkedIn, and you gotta do this, you gotta read 7 books, and you gotta do, a million things." And when I was asking Molly about like, "Hey, who are the people who have inspired you the most on LinkedIn, or like where else are you?" She's like, "What's your answer to that, Molly?"
No one. I don't follow anyone. I know that, other people have different opinions on that, and I, maybe should follow some people to get some insight, but like I said, I just try and keep it simple. I'm working on a strategy that works for me and works well for our business, and I'm just going to keep moving forward with that. But of course, if you're following people and you live by that, then it works for you and go for it. But I don't follow anyone.
Awesome. Well, Molly, at least I'm glad you didn't tell people to go down here and unsubscribe from my channel and unfollow me from LinkedIn and shut it
Yeah,
down. I
yeah.
appreciate you not telling people this is a waste of time. Now, joking aside, I think just talking to people who are in the front lines and learning what they're doing is special. It's different. It's awesome. When somebody is at 150 to 200% of quota every single month, they're knocking out of the park. They're doing something different. As we get to a close, Molly, I want to ask you about your idea. We're talking about inbound versus outbound and how those differ. How are you seeing that as an SDR who's been doing this for a while and who's a top performer? Are inbound leads and outbound leads the same? How do your account executives treat it? Like, how do the conversations vary?
For us, the conversations vary, immensely. So for inbound leads, those are obviously like the demo request, or they begin a trial of our platform. So those folks are, putting out their hand. They're wanting us to reach out to them, which I don't work inbound. We have a separate inbound SDR team. So they're wanting BigCommerce and to reach out to them to get more information and for them to begin the sales process. And then of course, outbound leads, the conversation is much different. The AEs are having to sell more with those conversations and prove that, BigCommerce is something that they can consider. So what we're asking of these prospects is to change their complete e-commerce platform. So that's something that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money. And so when you're reaching out and you get an outbound lead, that account executive is going to have to sell them on why it's important to move their platform over to BigCommerce, or why it's important to spend the money and to begin that heavy process of, it's a lot of technical lift. It's going to take time. So those for our business, those are completely different, inbound and outbound leads.
I almost want to grab this snippet of what you just said and have people forward that over to like their CROs and their VPs of sales. And if they have any questions, they should contact you as a consultant so you can explain this over and over and over again, because too many account executives and too many people are getting this wrong. They say, the outbound leads are bad. I really like the inbounds because they schedule a second meeting very quickly. The outbound leads, like I show them the platform and they don't like it. I'm like, well, did you explain why they should look at the platform and like what they're missing out on by, let's say in your case, being on Shopify versus BigCommerce? And are you explaining the
Right.
strategic direction in which their business is going to become a better business by doing what you're asking them to do? And they're like, no, man, I just do my demo. My God. So, Molly, you get it. You're a rock star. You're killing it. 150% quota. I appreciate you being so kind with your time, coming here, sharing your insights, telling us keep it simple. You know, learn the basics, learn the foundations, understand inbound and outbound are different. Build your safe cadences, figure out the engagement, call him up, send quick emails, and just cruise through life and go knock it out of the park without worrying too much. So thanks again for the time.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
been great chatting. Thank you.
Same here. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and have a great rest of the day. Cheers.